In this special bonus episode of Innovations in Education with David Adams, recorded in front of a live audience at the ASU+GSV Summit in San Diego, David is joined by Dr. Christina Cipriano, Director of the Education Collaboratory at Yale University, in a fireside chat that explores how K-12 school systems can leverage technology and the science of AI to expand access, strengthen human connection, and ensure equity for all learners. We hope you enjoy.
Welcome to Innovations in Education. I'm your host, David Adams, CEO of the Urban Assembly. And on this show, we bring guests every single episode who have made things work in public education. This show is about the innovators. This show is about the folks who are solving problems. This show is about making things work in education. Now, there's a lot of shows out there talking about what's wrong in the education systems, and those are great shows. There's some shows talking about what we're not doing well, and there's a lot to learn from those, but that's not this show. This show is going to be featuring educators who are making things work for young people and improving public education.
I'm Chris. I am the director of the Education Collaboratory, where we work to advance the science of learning and social and emotional development, so all students are seen, served, and safe to learn in school. And I'm just going to take a minute to tell you what that means. So SEEN refers to our evidence synthesis portfolio. So we really understand and think about whose funds of knowledge are being held up so that district leaders and policymakers and researchers have the evidence base they need to make informed decisions about their school community. So we conduct large-scale meta-analyses. You may have read one or two of them, systematic reviews, scoping reviews, and most recently launched a living systematic review of the state of the evidence of social emotional learning. And we're interested in two aspects of accessibility there that I'm going to bring into our conversation today around AI. The first is material accessibility. Like, can you actually access that information that you need? And then the second is contextual accessibility. Is it useful? Is it meaningful to your needs? Now, the second area of our work, served, refers to our school-based assessment portfolio. So I like to think about myself as a bit of a reformed psychometrician over the years. We build tools at the student, teacher, classroom, and school level to help schools tell their implementation journeys. And so what are the different competencies or constructs that are most of interest to the young person themselves so they can be agents of change and learning? What is the data point that the educator needs to be most meaningful to shift their instruction? What do we really want to understand around that classroom environment and culture to support positive change? And the third area of our work is safe to learn in school. This is our inclusion portfolio. Everything that I stand for and the work that we engage in centers the experiences of diversity in knowing, seeing, and navigating the world. So we center learner diversity in the ways we think about and understand access and opportunity to benefit from instruction. And we do that across the K-12 space. It's helping to design different models and frameworks, implementation studies, and supporting young people themselves to see themselves in the evidence base, to feel understood in the ways they're being measured, and to report on the effects in ways that are meaningful for them. That whole portfolio at the Education Collaboratory is free and publicly available. So I pride myself on being an open scientist in the ways that we engage. And a couple of years ago, we started getting in and learning about what's this thing, artificial intelligence? What's going on here? What are the ways in which we can think about it? And as we'll be sharing today in our conversation, I realized that my different vantage point on how I entered AI underscoring our work is not a disadvantage. It actually provides a fresh way to understand and think about what are the opportunities and promise within us using both generative and agentic AI. So I think I've talked enough. Pass it over to Dave to say hi.
Well, thank you. First, I just want to underscore Dr. Cipriano's thinking about translating research to practice. She is truly one on the forefront of research for social emotional learning. She's been on the forefront of research in terms of translating what she knows to what works in schools. Very, very excited and proud to be on stage with you today. It's a pleasure. Thank you. David Adams, Chief Executive Officer at the Urban Assembly. And so we're a nonprofit that works with school partners to design solutions and then scale those solutions from our schools to all schools. We've been thinking about social and emotional learning. We've been thinking about post-secondary readiness and success. We've been thinking about post-secondary access, instructional quality. And we've been thinking about it in the context of how time, how resources, how incentive structures, and how knowledge constrains our solutions in these contexts, in these spaces. And so we came to AI as a solution to these constraints, as a constraint releaser. And the solutions that we develop with AI are not about adding energy into the system, but releasing constraints, allowing energy to move throughout the system. In the context of schools, we think to ourselves, how can we operate on these constraints in ways that support student outcomes? So when I talk today about how to ensure teachers get more feedback more frequently, or how to connect students to post-secondary outcomes, we're going to talk about how to release constraints for our schools and thereby release the energy in the system itself. And I'll leave you with this idea that we no longer have to live in a world where we are constrained around the solutions that we design for young people in public education. That world is gone. It doesn't exist. What exists is the creativity of educators, the ability to map that creativity to technology like AI, agentic AI, generative AI, and the ability to realize those solutions in real time for young people in front of us. So I just want to sit with that as our opening. Each of us in this room has the ability to change the world, and we should use it.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, Chris.
So let's start off with, we're thinking about equity in the context of AI and the purpose of our time together today. When I say equity, I'm talking about that all students, all young people, every person has the opportunity to access and benefit from their learning. And when you read about AI, and I'm sure you've been to some of the talks here already, it's basically every talk, right? We're talking about it. Folks kind of say things like, AI is the equalizer, and we have this opportunity to create equity and to equalize in people's opportunity to access and benefit from it. That's what I hear. I have a hard time with this. And here's why. What are our models drawing from that's responding to you? What is the evidence or the data that they're pulling from? It's things that sit in front of a paywall or are been navigated to in a way that are likely laden with bias and old ways of thinking and being, particularly when we recognize kind of the variability of human experience and how in research and in, when I can nerd out and talk about what's been going on for the past 30 years in the science of learning and development here, the ways in which kids and humans were talked about and written about were sometimes overgeneralized and underrepresent diverse ways of being. A model's only as good as the information that you put into it. So if we're feeding our models and they're drawing from evidence bases that maybe have some bias there within or missing certain important constructs or capacities or old ways of thinking. I think maybe one of the most common examples of this is if you ask your AI, pick your type, and ask it anything about a student with disabilities, right? I can guarantee you that the answer that you get is not sufficient to where the science of learning is and how we best support our diversity in classrooms now and what we know. That evidence base is not populating. And so one kind of important point to think about here is that, I don't know, if I were an education funder, I heard rumor has it there might be some in the room, I would be investing in moving evidence-based practice in front of a paywall. I'd be investing in moving the best science from the top tier places in front of a paywall so that it feeds the models. And then, those of us, like most of us, right, don't read, I do, but don't read the journals, right? Only 14% of studies that ever get published in peer review get read by somebody other than the authors, the reviewers, and the editorial board. Really. In our lab, we've been thinking about, how could AI support us in being a knowledge broker to increase both that, material accessibility, how do you access it, so it's not behind a paywall, and then your contextual accessibility, is it useful to you? Because I'll tell you, the evidence work that we engage in and meta-analysis, effect sizes, they usually don't mean a lot to most people, right? What those numbers are, or even some of the terms that we use in social emotional learning and competence, depending upon who you are and what level of education you have and what region of the country you're in, that evidence may not be actually meaningful to you, even if you could open the PDF, right? And so we've been thinking about how AI can support us, and we've been training a series of different AI-supported chatbots from LLMs that we developed around these evidence bases to help us support to be that knowledge broker. And so you could say, I'm a parent, I want to know about school-based supports for learning in Texas. And it will pull from and it will talk to you based on the actual science, the proven science, not the for-profit vendor supported, right? The actual science with evidence of psychometric reliability and validity of things that I nerd and care about in a language that is interpretable for you, right? Like, what could that do? So anyway, it's a long way for me getting at this idea that we have the potential here to support in equalizing and support in equity of information access and opportunity to benefit. But it requires intention, and it requires an intentionality that we understand and recognize is ours for those of us in positions of privilege that we can act on.
This question of information and how information moves is something we think a lot about. I heard you talk about where information lives and how information is accessed. And I know on the main stage this morning, we were talking about this idea of like, what do people need to know? Like, what does it mean to be educated in 2026? And what will it mean to be educated in 2030 and as we move along? The question of how information moves through society and what information we're going to need to make decisions is interesting to me. Like you talk about 14% of research is used to make decisions. And I think about like a current political conversations and how much information influences political conversations, and it's not a lot. And that's why I think like this idea is like human connection. There's a lot of what's in the world, like what do we have? What's our information? And I think we have been really thinking about it the way is like, how do we take that what and make it work? And so we have a lot of information. Somebody asked me, what research are you doing in education? And how do you know this thing works? And I'm like, we've been doing the same research in education for a long time. I think I disagree a little bit. I don't need state-of-the-art research. I need state-of-the-art implementation, and I need state-of-the-art supports for moving that research into practice. I think a lot of the things with AI is this kind of, we get excited about the thing, and the thing is kind of easy. We don't get excited about how to help people discern, how to translate ideas into decisions on the social emotional side, how to operationalize concepts effectively and apply them. And I think that's where you get that product, right? I think a lot of the products that you see out in the AI space are really focused on like knowing things and like embodying the knowing in the AI. And what we are really trying to think about is like, who needs to know what to make good choices? It's really exciting that AI knows a lot of things. And I would even say all of human history is embodied in this chatbot. But like our young people need to know certain things in order to exist in the world. Our citizens need to know certain things in order to exist in the world. And I think we're putting a lot of energy, we talked about this before, in ensuring chatbots know things and make decisions, and less so for actual people who are like in the world.
Yes.
And that's weird.
Let's be real here. We're here talking about ways that we're supporting social emotional development in schools, kind of underscoring that work, right? And we're in a political climate right now where like the explicit skill instruction of students learning how to be informed decision, make informed decisions, or how to problem solve collectively, those explicit skill instruction in some spaces and places is being banned. At the same time that there's being like double down investments in agentic AI to teach our AI how to act autonomously. And it really like begs the question, this is something that I've been doing a lot of thinking and writing about. Why are we investing there? The AI can make the decision for you or make the good decision, or we're helping to train the AI to have great judgment. Like, why aren't we investing in teaching our kids how to be better humans? Like, if it's going to just keep getting better and better, then we need to keep getting better and better too. And the evidence is so clear. Explicit skill instruction supports human development on positive outcomes that matter across the lifespan. Like, this is not a new story. We just continuously keep building this evidence base here. And like, yeah, there's a few things that like don't work as well. We could talk about those, but by and large, it's productive and healthy. And if you don't provide young people with skills and strategies to make healthy decisions and manage their big emotions in productive ways, they will fall victim to the dangerous ones. You are doing them a disservice. And so I'm really just been reconciling over this past calendar year and how we're seeing this shift as agentic AI is taking off and this idea of like autonomous development, decision making, and how we're investing. Like, great, it can make your decisions for you, but like, where does that leave that young person in the absence of their technology? Like, where does that leave them in that conversation with another person? And so I have kids, Dave has kids. We've talked a bit about like how do we approach this with our kids? Like, how are our kids using it? And, I'm a big believer, and the science backs me. We want to make sure we're making and teaching our young people how to ask the right questions. We've always wanted to teach them how to ask the right questions and not be afraid of those questions. And, now it's called prompting. And the information, you go back to, the science of my work, and I share with teachers across the world and parents for that matter as well. You need to introduce yourself into an interaction the way you want to be seen. Because our brains, especially as we age, they're constantly tricking us. They're becoming more efficient. And people don't see each other as they are. We see them as they imagine them to be. You're either a parent or that parent, a teacher or that teacher. And I'll tell you, when I'm out in spaces dressed in like my non-work attire, with like my 4 kids out and about with my tattoos out, whatever, like people are not like, oh, Dr. Cipriano, like, oh, no, they're like, that woman can't control her kid. They have decided who I am regardless of, so when I introduce myself and I say I am Miles' mom, we're not from around here, how can you help? When I give them information, anyway, so I teach my children to the same thing. And when we're engaging with our AI in all the different ways we're engaging, introduce the self the way you want to be seen, give it feedback, and ask the right questions. So my 12-year-old, we had him working with his AI to introduce himself, tell him about his goals, create some goals with it, and then create his screen time and fitness plan. So it's like, here's how, like, a propose a model for, like, you're spending too much time in the video games, you want to be playing more basketball, like, here's what you have for your homework and stuff. Create a model. And he iterated with it, went back and forth with it. And I'm like, this is amazing. This is great. If I had that when I was 12, like, we have some really good opportunities there, but you have to be intentional and you have to engage with it in a meaningful way.
Yeah, the other idea there that I think is really important. So Anthropic put out this 80-page constitution for Claude. Y'all tracking this? And then it's brilliant. I mean, like, the questions that they ask is like, what does it mean to be helpful if the user wants to do a bad thing? Or like, what is our role or my role in Claude? What's my role in power transfer? So I've been thinking a lot about this. They put together some of the top minds in philosophy and ethics and character development to train a robot. Yeah. And I like starting back. I've said this to most of you guys. And there's this character, his name is Lieutenant Commander Data. And he spends all his effort trying to become human, right? He studies humans, he gets a cat. It's a thing. It does this thing. And we are doing the opposite. We're trying to invest in synthetic forms of life more than we are investing in ourselves. And we talk about human connection, right? We watch young people now investing in synthetic relationships as opposed to ourselves. And I just think Data would ask us what's going on. I think Data was a robot who wanted to be human. And we're like human trying to make our robots better. So I want to sit with this because this is something that bothers me. It's like, where is our energy going as a society? I'm not just talking about dollars and cents. And Chris, you said this, I think the reason why there's so much money going into, and someone argue that much of the American economy right now is being propped up by AI. Yeah. That is where the money's come from. What does it mean to invest that much energy and concern as we're cutting the education budget? What does it mean to put that much energy and concern into bits, zeros, and ones while neglecting our actual children? We have a choice as a society. We talked about this before. We came in here that each of us in the room can lead now. We are no longer bounded by constraints, right? This question of how to access information, how to create resources, that's not a thing that's stopping us from being great. But what I really concerned about is are we going to use that new opportunity to invest in something that doesn't exist, corporally, right? It's not a real thing. Relationships with AI are not real. Yeah. It's like Diet Coke. or we got to do it in the real world with real people for real reasons. And if there's not a return on investment for teaching ethics to young people and teaching good decision making to young people, well, we still think it's important to do.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think about how, you hark back to 20 years ago, 25 years ago, social media breaks into the market and everyone's like, keep the kids off social media. We're afraid of it. And then, in developmental science, which is where my training lies, it was really clear right from the get-go that this was another sphere of the ecosystem of how young people were learning and growing. And, then it was like all of a sudden LinkedIn comes up and now it's like social capital building, connections. If you're not on social media, you're missing out. You're missing developmental opportunities. You're missing interactions. You're missing the opportunity to be benefiting from your engagements. And not to say that I'm not saying that social media is great. There's a lot of problems with it, but we needed to train our young people and train our educators and create policies and monitoring systems around the, ethical use of it, the healthy use of it, and help them to understand why do certain things land the way they do online? What is the difference between that and in person? Because in person was always going to be there, right? It's always going to be there. And then now I think about where we're moving and how we're kind of like starting to stand up some levels of federal policy around thinking about and supporting young people. But it's really like few and far between. And a lot of this wait, it's bad, or be afraid of it, or there's a lot of fear, right, that's engaging. And that's not realistic because they're going to do it anyway. And, if you ever work with an adolescent, you tell them not to do something. What is the first thing that they do? And especially now, if we're not teaching them explicit skill instruction of social emotional learning in their classroom, they're certainly going to do it and make that decision right away. And so, we have an opportunity to kind of build and engage it because we want to make sure that folks have those skills to expand and use whatever it was that they learned through their AI interactions in actual human interaction, right? Those are always going to be there. David, what do you think? Should we could or should?
We should could.
Okay. We have a lot of shared work together across our organizations over the years and think a lot about just because you can do something with AI, should you? We're going to just spitball a little bit on this. Go ahead, Dave. Kick us off. We're going to rapid fire.
Yeah. So, okay. Could AI replace teachers in the classroom? I think the answer is it could.
It depends on what you consider replacing.
I do think it could. The question is should.
Right.
What you got?
Yeah. So then should AI transform teacher education and preparation for the classroom?
Yeah, I think this is the frame. I think we get excited about the coulds. And then we say things that are not true. There's a lot of coulds that we don't want to believe that are possible futures for ourselves, our capabilities, our kids, our schools.
Yeah.
And we have to sit with those coulds, honestly, and then decide should by talking to our policymakers, our systems, our institutions, et cetera. So that's why we're going to do this thing. Let's do audience participation.
So are we including values in the could, or we just could? It's yes or no. Yes or no.
That's a good question. I mean,
is there a future where that thing could happen?
Okay. Yeah. Fun. Yeah.
Good.
Fun.
Good.
Okay.
We got some educators here.
So take, for example, because I've done math, my background was in math.
Yeah.
How many kids, especially from underrepresented, go from math year to year to year to year and never learn?
Mm-hmm.
But I've seen some examples where a math teacher is teaching them the Pythagorean theorem and they do a run. Then they understand what it is, or they make it into a story, and so they can use the AI in a different way. So it's not necessarily teaching the guiding the way that they're learning in a way that it works the students, not the way that we want to learn, especially with math or science or something like that. But make it interesting for the student,
right? And then imagine, right, if that educator learned that during their teacher prep program. And that was what was embedded in the way in which they thought about multimodal ways of, both during their treatment of the student, the education, the understanding, and their ability to show that they're benefiting from it, the whole continuum of the UDL. And should AI be a part of transforming that in teacher prep? I'd argue yes. I think we've got a tremendous opportunity there.
I think if we refine this, the idea of could AI support aspects of the teaching and learning process, right? So the first could AI replace teachers? Could AI support aspects of the teaching and learning process? I think as we refine our statements, we get closer and closer to value. and understanding where that value lies in a system, right? And we're talking about constraints. Let me throw another one. Could AI replace therapists?
What should it? Growing my right? Not us. So yeah, no, this is why we were saying this is the could and should, right? But shouldn't, right? And what would the science suggest? Not so great.
We don't have enough capacity for mental health support.
Just because they could, right? Like they not necessarily should. And we know that actually the federal guidelines is that it's one school mental health professional per every 500 students. Whoa. Just like chill with that for a second. That's the guidelines. And guess what? 2 years ago, there were only 3 states in the United States who met that minimum criteria.
So if we don't have enough support for mental health and AI could provide a 10% solution, should we employ that 10% solution to support those kids or those people who would have symptoms alleviated?
Amount of AI creates 20% more mental health.
But we're assuming that we're not asking the questions that will lead AI to be more precise and actually delivering on that, which for me, some of the fear comes out of what becomes how we train humans.
Exactly. And we're talking about less than should, right?
Yeah.
The science of AI, the cognitive science of AI and cognitive development that might be hindered by cognitive offloading. So where does all that fit in? Right. You start talking about all of yes. If I feel like I don't hear enough about that, no, not as much as we need to know to really understand the should. Right. I was just out in LA at ARA and NCME last week. And I was speaking a lot about this idea of just because you can have your AI do XYZ in your classroom for you as a teacher did not necessarily mean that teacher has the time to interpret whatever the AI did that was so great, then use it in a meaningful way in that classroom environment. And people, some people in the ecosystem will say that it's making things more efficient in schools, or it has the market to make things more efficient in schools. But there's an assumption there of time on the educator and buy-in and literacy, AI literacy now in this regard, that frankly needs to be brought back to.
The question of what we're trying to accomplish in education is the foundational question for could and should paradigm, right? What is the end state of an educated mind? And where does AI play a role in supporting or not that end state? And I think that's something we should keep talking about.
So I think the other thing that is also glossed over is as we talk about these coulds and we shoulds.
Yeah.
The answer that question I have around equity. So is it going to be that some people look at it and where are the guardrails?
Exactly. Yeah. If you are the MTA, by the way, and you are arguing, they would say that you need 2 conductors for every subway car in the MTA, even though it's been almost all completely automated, the actual process of driving a train. So I just want to throw, the union was we need more subway engineers. So more safety. So here's a question, where and when do you need people, and where can you automate? Those are all questions. The back.
I think the question was, should essential services, are we setting ourselves up to be replaced? Because if you think about it, beyond some of these kind of touchy-feely with empathetic things, sometimes we are in efficiency now of optimization. Which AI allows a lot of work to choose.
It's a fair question.
What is that next level? What is inefficient in this?
Let me take this and then we'll get back to our could spaces, right? So over at the UA, we did a return to work policy. And one of the big things was well, David, I'm super, super productive at home. And one of the shoulds and coulds was, where do we create human connection and collaboration and serendipity, right, against optimization for productivity? And how do we measure counterfactuals of what could happen just by going and having a cup of coffee or being here? Do you remember during COVID where people were we're going to do stuff like this, but online?
Yeah.
People were wait, you want me to pay to go to a conference where I just learn things? Because that's not how I go to a conference. I go to a conference for the after party, right?
Yeah.
I want you to sit with that, right? What are we optimizing for? And how do we know what we're losing in that optimization? And that's when we think about teaching and learning. What are we trying to solve for? And how do we get there using different tools?
Yeah. And back to the tools. Could AI build better educational tools and assessments. Like, could AI do it? Maybe, arguably, yes, but it's going to require a heavy hand of human interaction. This is something that my team has been deeply embedded in for the past 2 years in our build and grow out of our tools that we build for schools. And I'll tell you, you can start with the AI and it can be a great thought partner for you. And it can help you with some of the things that you'd have to spend a lot of money to stand up really quickly, but you can never end with it. You absolutely can never end with it, because the ways in which we're thinking about and scaling and supporting assessment and measurement in school-based places, if it's built on a model that's drawing from bias estimates. And we know when we think about school assessment practices, we go down that of like where these even terms of competence came from and the ways in which they're structured. It's not set up to be optimal to all the kids across the distribution. It's set up to be really great for the middle of the distribution and do so quickly and efficiently. And I bet if I walked around enough, there's probably a couple of them out there right now that have gone to scale and they look great. Our team's got some. I tell you, I can't believe how cool they look now. And like, I think about how like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when we were building some of our assessments, the time and energy that it took to stand up an ed tech product. And now you can do it a couple of months at most, right? In the ways you could scale. But if humans aren't a part of that process and there isn't a constant check going on of what's being produced and how you are to the cognitive load question and the ways in which we're thinking about using that information to then inform decisions that you're making, changes in your school. If we're not following it all the way through the process, like, what are you building it for? Like, what are you building it for? Are you building it for because it's something that people want to invest in right now? I don't know. I mean, it kind of feels that way in the ways in which it's being structured.
It could be, yes.
Yeah. And so our team, we've got a number of different bodies of work, and we've been really thinking about how we can use AI to build tools to support social justice and free tools for advocacy in our K-12 education spaces, and the ways in which we could write code and build infrastructure so that it becomes immediately scalable for anybody to pick up. We center the experiences of disability in our assessments and in our building and our evaluations, but you could just as easily plug in their language, gender, so forth, and use those models to then support kind of your understanding of what's happening in your school community or the broader national context. It's just like one example of a way to frame it differently. But I like to think about all assessment as intervention. So I really sit squarely in the formative space in that regard. And for the educators in the room, we've got a tremendous opportunity here with how we're using AI in educational assessment, but it has to have the adult component. It has to have students component. You know, they're good?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I agree.
I appreciate you. We're still friends.
Yeah. I mean, we got to unleash our mind and then decide what should be. Like, I don't think things have to have humans in the loop. I think things should have humans in the loop. And I think when we use that framing, we understand the values that we're putting into play. Mm-hmm. And I think we're teaching our young people, or teaching each other how to differentiate from could and should, right? Like, you could be violent, but should you? I was thinking about this the other day. Like, you know Tesla, right? Mm-hmm. So, anybody see the autopilot mode on Tesla? Everybody checking that, right? This is like an interesting day to me. Haley's not here. So the first time she showed it to me, I was in New York, and she's like, "David, don't worry. It's like it drives itself." But she's like, "But my hand's on the wheel." I'm like, "Oh," but it's not. She's like, not driving it. The car is, and so like there is this fake version of humans in a loop where your hand is on the wheel.
It's a great memory.
But like Tesla is driving you, right? And you're feeling really good about yourself. Look at that curve, right? Yeah. Haley was not like that. She was like, she was having a whole conversation with me. And the question is like, do we need people driving cars? And I think that's a question. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, do we need 2 subway engineers? What I'm probably confident in is that young people need relationship to learn.
Yes.
And that we can be like, that's not like me just saying the thing, right? This is like a thing we should know.
Right.
And so as we look at our AI and human connection, it's like, if that's our starting point, young people need relationships to learn. How are we using AI to solve for that problem? As opposed to like, I don't know that we need people to drive. Right? I think our economy benefits from having taxi cabs.
So
truck drivers.
I love that you went right into the relationship. That's exactly what I was thinking as you were kind of like heading down the path there. So Could AI support with explicit skill instruction that meets every learner where they're at, while the adults are primarily involved with forming and supporting the relationship building and the social aspects of their human development as they move across learning? Could that be the future of what K-12 education looks like in the US? Should that be in the coming years? I mean, I'll tell you, as a parent of 4 kids, 3 who have varying levels of neurodivergence and exceptionalities, I would be really excited about that. More time and energy on the human skills that matter in their interactions, while also knowing that they're getting what they need in their diversity of their explicit instruction, because we know our learners aren't getting it right now at scale in the US. It is few and far between that students with diverse learning needs are being met where they're at in the instructional capacity of classrooms. So we say it's because educators maybe don't have the training, lack capacity, so like all the time for this. Well, I think we can find a way there.
Yeah, I think that. I think this is where we're going is what scares people. Oh, it scares people because we're talking about, you don't need people driving cars, right? But you still need people to do a thing for cars to drive.
Yeah.
And so if you have the conversation, accent the qualifier, which says AI could solve for some things. I don't think there's a teacher in this room who would not say, I don't have enough time to do all the things that I need to do as a teacher. And would appreciate tools that create efficiencies in the process, right? I think we have this conversation from the space of replacement as opposed to the place of addition, right? And support and the ability, like where you going, right? To say, if we use AI in teacher practice, then guess what? You will have more time to create a more engaging classroom. Right? And so I think the struggle is, can AI replace all of these things? Not absent humans who understand how these things work together.
And that's where explicit social and emotional learning instruction matters most at the student, educator, mental health professional, and adult levels.
Let me just add that the danger in separating the role of relationships and learning, even those explicit skills, as being separate. So even in that explicit skill building and the role that AI can play, the role of relationships is central in that as well. And so I think the danger in positioning relationships as part of SEL work, I think it can be done on the side while they're learning the concrete skills over here, is really difficult to advancing really what this work is going to require, which is making sure humans are in all aspects of teaching and learning. Relationship is central. So, mechanism of learning.
To your point, the union is fighting for jobs the same way. Right? Like you made me think about, remember we used to have to pay the toll. That person's gone.
That was a fight. And let me just say what that was one issue, because like, paying tolls stopped traffic. So you stopped, looked at the person, got your 25 cents, they had to do it with $50 because it was like that, right? And so like the lack of tolls moves traffic more efficiently and reduces the constraints in terms of like, so I just want to, I want to sit with that, right? Okay. I like what you just said, because I was thinking about AI as all the modifiers we were talking about, an accelerator, an equalizer. And then your comment brought me back to the fact that what you asked earlier, David, is the end state, right? So like, this is the ring full of metaphors. So I was at CVS earlier today. Like, take forever. And I just wanted like chapstick. I was like, it's taking 3 seconds to get in. And I was on the phone with my mom and I was like, I just wish, and I looked over and there was the little automated station where I didn't have to go through the woman. And I went through in like 3 seconds. My mom was like, oh, I would never do that because I need a bag. I'm like, I don't need a bag. What's the end state? I do need there are reports in the process, obviously, of human connection is necessary. But I think this conversation is exciting because it presents an opportunity for us as educators to admit, which is uncomfortable, that there are points in the process where we don't need that.
I hear the should and could of it all, but then I also think about it from a workforce standpoint where population decline is real. And as we see these populations decline, the government ain't paying us to have more babies yet, and the credit they give us really ain't enough to do it. So we are going to have to ask ourselves, especially like in rural population segments where that mental health counselor may simply not be there. That multilingual educator simply may not be there. And this is going to keep happening. It's going to keep getting worse unless that paradigm shifts. And the other side of that coin is the illicit actors are already thinking and they're already doing it. And they're already going down that pipeline. And so I think the real key of all this is the hybridity of skill set. How are we creating these transferable skill sets that allow us to be people, and then the AI is there.
Yeah.
But we as human connections can keep growing because we're not, the amount of bureaucracy that every human being has to do on a daily basis is astronomical. And so how do we ask ourselves, due to the evolution of technology, which has divided us, how can AI actually bring people together to be the best in what they are as subject matter experts, right? Because this
at being human.
Right. And it assumes, right, that you have the time to interpret all the things that AI is doing for you, building for you, setting up for you, and you're able to act on it agentically yourself. You may have heard this joke before, but it's hanging up in our lab. So I'll just share it because it reminds me of your comment that, AI might replace your job unless you're the personality hire. So we need to teach each other and we need to recognize the importance of those interpersonal skills and the ways in which we're engaging and showing up the way we want to be seen and understood so that we can create and form those healthy relationships that will allow us to weather and be nimble as our industries shift and change. And we know that those industries are going to shift and change. This is not what is happening right now. The content is new, but the system is not, right? U.S. history, if you think about what has happened and how technology has shifted, the way we work, how we work, what we're working on, that's across the history of this country, right? And so we need to hold on to that and think, okay, how can we do this differently now? And how can we shift and grow with it in a way that's useful and productive for all of us?
So it's been a great conversation, folks. Thank you. There's a couple things I want to leave us with. The first is, and Ruben, you said this, be honest. There used to be a conversation that said that AI would not be able to manage the affective domain. It couldn't read emotions. It can, and it does. And with more consistency that people do, because it doesn't embody emotion, so it can react to emotions without feeling them, which is something we all struggle to do. I can only speak for myself. I also struggle to do that. So be honest with the capability is number one. Number two, know where we're embodying skills. We could teach AI to do a lot of things, and that's fantastic. We need to teach our young people to do a lot of these same things. And I do not want us to invest more in silicon than we do in our youth. So I just want to say that. I recognize that you don't raise $1 billion in equity off of schools and young people, but we raise our futures, and that's important. That's it. Thanks for listening to our latest episode of Innovations in Education, where we bring education leaders who have made things work in the education sector. If you like this episode, please subscribe so that you can hear more great content around innovations in education. I've been your host, David Adams, and have a great day.